Going live now. Make sure we're good. Yep. So hi everyone, I'm Danielle from Black Rock Castle Observatory, and thank you so much for joining us here on the BEO Education YouTube channel. This is a great place for teachers to find videos and educational resources. We post videos up that we create here for you that you can use in the classroom, and we do a lot of fun events and live streams like this one, so make sure you subscribe to the channel, because when you do, then you get notified when we post those things out. So today, now we have joining us a very special guest who is a former NASA astronaut, Dan Tani, and we're so thrilled to have you here with us, Dan. Thank you so much for being part of our Space Week.
Thank you.
You're the best person we could possibly have to do it with. Thank you so much. So,
I appreciate
Dan,
it. Thank you.
You've had a very big career within space and different angles within the space industry, right? So you had a 16-year career in NASA, and you were saying that you flew how many missions?
So it's interesting. I get to wear 3 patches because I'm a member of 3 space crews, but I had 2 journeys into space, and that's because on my long mission, I flew as part of a space shuttle crew up to the space station. And then my job shifted and I became a member of the space station crew. So I consider myself part of 3 crews, but that was 2 trips into space, but for a total of over 4 months. It was a great career at NASA.
Yes, I had 132 days in space. Is that right?
I think that's my total. Yeah.
That's and 6 spacewalks as well.
Yeah, got to do 6 EVAs, going out the door and working on the outside of the space station. The space shuttle was quite a. Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry, I might be a little choppy. There we go.
Okay,
I'm back. So yeah, I got to do 6 spacewalks. We call them EVAs, extravehicular activities, and I got to go out and help build the space station, do some repairs. And it's quite a privilege to be able to put on the big spacesuit and get to go outside.
Can't even imagine that. It has to be probably, I obviously have never been to space, but I would assume probably is the highlight is actually being able to go outside and do something.
It's one of the most memorable things. Doing a spacewalk is a big production, of course. I mean, it's pretty dangerous, and we have to make sure everything is lined up, everything's working. It's a big coordination between the ground and us in space. And it's a long day. When you're in that suit, you're in that suit for about 12 hours because you got to get ready and you got to get your body prepped and then coming out. And so it's a long and pretty painful day, but the memories of being outside are just fantastic.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the views from space and everything. It's got to be
spectacular.
Yeah. So we have had teachers from actually around the country sending in questions from their students.
Great.
I just want to get right into that because they've sent in.
Terrific.
Thank you so much to the teachers. You've sent on so many questions. Honestly, don't know if we'll get through all of them. We're really going to try to get through as many as possible. And we're going to focus on what your career path was like, Dan, and
sure.
How you got into the space industry and what the kind of things that you were doing and what kind of inspired you. So I have for our first and second class from Manister National School in Limerick who have asked some questions, and they want to know, what subjects do you need to know to become an astronaut?
Well, to become an astronaut at NASA, I assume it's going to be the same at the European Space Agency, or if Ireland ever has a space agency, the Irish Space Agency at some point. But for NASA, to apply to become an astronaut, you need a college degree, a bachelor's degree in either science, mathematics, or engineering. And so right now, those are the requirements. That might change in the future, but now for now, that's the requirement. So for first and second class students, get excited about how things work, and biology and science and maths, and get interested in that. And then it's always my advice to, when you go into university, study what you want to study, do what you think is fun and enjoyable. And maybe that's not math or engineering or science, but in 10 or 15, 20 years, when you go to university and then find looking for your first jobs, maybe the requirements for what NASA or the other space agencies have, maybe that will be different. And at least you'll have done something that you love to do. But for right now, there's a requirement to have a degree, college degree in mathematics, engineering, or science.
That's really great advice. The idea that you do what you love, and then that could be
See what happens.
Or later on. That's very good advice.
In my career, when I was in university, actually graduate school, I had played with the idea of applying to be an astronaut, but all of the civilian astronauts at that time, meaning not that didn't have military, had doctorate degrees, PhDs, and so there was a point in my graduate career where I was trying to decide, should I continue and get a PhD, or am I done after my master's degree? And I decided, well, I'm not going to. I like engineering a lot, but I don't love it enough to do it for free for 3 or 4 more years as a PhD student. And so I decided not to. So when I thought, okay, well, I think I'm giving up my astronaut aspirations at that time. Well, it turns out NASA started choosing astronauts that did not have a doctorate degree at that point. And so I thought I was getting off the path of an astronaut. Well, it turns out that NASA changed their thinking about what they wanted to choose, and it worked out perfectly for me. And so now many astronauts come to the program without a PhD.
So this is not just advice that you have. This is speaking from personal experience.
Yeah, that's how it worked out.
That's great. And actually, I want to skip to a question I had seen at the bottom here, because they had, if I can remember which school it was, because they were asking about, you mentioned military, and they had asked if you needed to have a military background. Oh yeah, that's coming from Patrician Secondary School in Newbridge in Kildare. And one of the students wanted to know, how long did it take to become an astronaut, and do you need to have a military background?
Sure. For the NASA program, you do not need a military background. In fact, my guess is about 2/3 of the astronauts are not military. About 1/3 are military. And the reason military is actually a good way. Military experience is great for astronauts because they teach the type of leadership skills and the type of we call them operational skills that they're looking for in astronauts. But those skills exist outside of the military also. And so you do not need to know to be part of the military. And the other question is, how long does it take to become an astronaut? Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the second part. Yep.
So to become I don't know, not qualified, but to become a candidate to be chosen to be an astronaut, they're looking for people from their late 20s to their early 40s, in that range. So they want people that have experience, and they want people that have done several things in their lives. And then once you get selected to become an astronaut, then you go to NASA and you train as what's called an astronaut candidate. And that's sort of making sure that you get the basic skills to become an assignable astronaut, an astronaut that actually can go into space. And so that takes a couple of years. And then at that point, now you're a full-fledged astronaut, and you just sit and wait by your phone, waiting for the phone call to give you a mission so that you can start training for your mission.
Can't even imagine what that's like. Actually, I didn't realize that they would take candidates up into 40s. Into the 40s. There's no age limit, and yes, it's not unusual to be selected into your 40s. The prime age is generally in your 30s. I was selected right when I was 35, so it's not too late for me after all.
Not too late. Get that application in.
That's great. So from the school in Limerick as well, they wanted to know what inspired you to become an astronaut.
Well, I think there are two types of people that would do anything they can to get into space, and people that will do anything they can to not go into space. I've always been like many, half maybe more than half of the kids that I meet, intrigued by not only space, but travel and exploration and wondering what it's like over there and what it looks like from up there. And so I love the exploration aspect of being an astronaut and doing incredibly fun things. I love roller coasters. I love, adventure rides. And so that seemed very intriguing to me. So when I was in primary school, the astronauts were nothing like me, meaning they were all military men, and they were all, I didn't see any Asian Americans. And so it was, everybody played astronaut. Everybody wanted to pretend like they were astronauts, but it was never really a serious thought in my mind. I also wanted to be, Superman, and I didn't think that was going to happen either. But as I went to university and got some jobs, and actually the big thing that happened is I met a couple astronauts in my work, and this image of what an astronaut is, and I talked to them and got to know about their family and stuff, and that made me think these are just real people that have a job. And so that was the moment really where I thought, hey, maybe this is a possibility, and maybe this is something that I can do, and I should apply for that.
That's interesting. Yeah. So it's that personal interaction that you had with them.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have another school with a bunch of questions here as well. It's a Gael school from Kinsale, and they would like to know. They said, what should we study in school and in college to become an astronaut? But we kind of covered like the subjects that you would want to study. So did you have a particular time? Because they're asking, when did you decide to become an astronaut? Was there a specific kind of like aha moment that like?
So, and I'm sorry, what school is this from, Kinsale?
It's Gael School. Oh, you're gonna make me pronounce this?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Irish. Sorry.
Is it?
Well, let me just say that
it's Kinsale in Irish. It's like Kinsale, I think.
Kintoila, right?
There you go.
My family is in Kinsale. My family's from Kinsale. My wife is from Kinsale, and so I have a lot of family there. So that's why I'm just asking.
Yeah.
So right now, if you're in the NASA program, I think the ESA program is the same. It's engineering, science, or mathematics. The moment, so yeah, I described this time when I met some astronauts and I thought, gee, it seems like they have a great job, and I should think of, I'd love to think about having that job. And that was the moment I sort of turned towards thinking that it's possible. And then we heard, I was in the office, and we heard that they were taking applications for the astronaut program, and they do that every couple of years. And so almost on a whim, I would say, we called NASA and had some applications sent to us. And so we filled them out. And I say on a whim, it's like walking into a shop and deciding I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. And it didn't seem like a big life-changing decision at that time. And so like a lottery ticket that you put in your back pocket and kind of forget about, we filled out these applications. We were all excited about it, and we sent them in, knowing for sure that it was going to go nowhere, but that we were participating. And so even at that moment, I didn't think, I really want to be an astronaut. It was just something that you do because if you're like me and you want to be an astronaut, that's one of the things you do. Not until I got the phone call that said, hey, do you want to come to NASA and interview to be an astronaut? That's when I got really excited, and really, I think that's what really lit the fire in me, and thought, now I know I really want to do it. If I'm this close, now I really want to do it. And I was very fortunate to get accepted my first time through the process. Many astronauts have to go through that process a couple times, get interviewed and get all excited, and then get turned down, and then have to go through that process a couple times. So it was a growing urge in me, which is sort of curious and And of course, who doesn't want to do it? And let me go through the next step of filling out the application. But then getting the interview was really the time when I thought, this is really what I'd like to do.
Did you believe the phone call when it first they say, hey, do you want to come to NASA?
So when I got the phone call for the interview, I was embarrassed because the woman who coordinates all the applications, her name is Teresa, and she said, hello, this is Teresa Gomez. And it didn't ring a bell immediately. And so I got her name wrong. I repeated her name incorrectly. And then she goes, no, it's Teresa. And I go, oh, Teresa Gomez, right? And so, and then the other funny part of that phone call is that she said, yeah, we'd like to have you come down to interview for the astronaut program. And she said, can you come down? I think it was October 23rd. Can you come down October 23rd? And I said, hold on, let me check. And I went to my little calendar book, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? Oh, I'm sorry, I've got a dentist appointment that week. I can't come down. So if anybody calls you and asks if you want to interview to be an astronaut, the answer is yes, of course, I'll be there whenever you say.
And your anniversary is coming up then pretty soon.
Yeah, that's right. It was the end of October. I was down there for Halloween, and so I can't remember the exact date, but it was something like that.
That's so good. Okay, so we'll go on to the next school then. We have Clontuskert School from Galway, and they'd like to know, what did you research while you were in space?
So when I went to the space, I went to the space station twice, once for 2 weeks on my first mission, and that was just to go and primarily bring supplies to the crew that was all up there. We brought a crew up, and we brought the crew that was up there down. And then we did some repairs and some maintenance. So I didn't do any science on that. I didn't do much science on that. We did some small experiments on the shuttle. When I went back to the space station and lived there for 4 months, I was there during a time, it's called assembly. It was a 10-year period when we were building the space station all the way from 2001 to 2011, basically. And so my primary job there was to build the space station, help build it. We brought a big module up. We had to do spacewalks to go hook stuff up on the outside and hook stuff up on the inside. And so I did a little bit of science, but not much. My primary job was to build and construct the space station. But we did some interesting experiments with, there was one interesting experiment with fluids. So if you think about salad dressing, which is oil and vinegar, and if you let them sit on the table, the oil, of course, floats to the top and the vinegar goes to the bottom because they are dissimilar weight, density. But if you shake it up, right, then you get this emulsion, and it looks like one type of fluid. But then over time, the light stuff goes up, the oil and the vinegar, the heavy stuff goes down. So if you do that in space, this light and heavy stuff is dependent on gravity. So if you don't have gravitational forces, it'll stay all mixed up. But what's interesting is if you leave it for a long time, for weeks and weeks, it turns out that it will start to separate because like molecules tend to attract each other, very small forces, but they will start to clump. And so you'll get some clumps of oil and some clumps of vinegar. And that's really interesting. Why does that happen? What are the forces there? And so we did an experiment with not salad dressing, not oil and water, but with dissimilar materials, and shake them up. And then we would photograph them over weeks. And you could see the separation of the like fluids, which is really interesting. And why is that? So that was one of the experiments we did. We did some, let's see, we did a lot of experiments on ourselves. A lot of the stuff we do on the space station is about how human bodies react to being in space for months at a time. And so we were the experiment a lot of the time. Their protein crystal growth, and I didn't get to do them because we didn't have the correct rack, but now we do space science on how fire reacts in space. You don't think about it, but fire, a lot of what you think of as fire is gravity dependent because it depends on what's hot and what's not hot and what rises when it's hot, and
the flame would like stretch
when it's hot only because of gravity.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Like a flame on a candle. The reason a flame on a candle is nice and long is that it's hotter on top and it draws air in.
Mm.
But this is a gravity dependent function because the air gets hotter and it gets less dense, so it floats up like a balloon. And so air gets fed into a candle, a flame, because of gravity, because of buoyancy. Well, we don't have gravitational forces in low Earth orbit. And so flames tend to get to be spherical, and then they can actually burn themselves out because it's not drawing oxygen into the flame, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So there's lots of interesting science going on in space.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I feel like we could talk a whole hour just on that alone.
Yeah.
So we'll go to Marymount National School from Drogheda, and this is their 4th class. And how did you train to be an astronaut, and how long does the training take?
So once you become an astronaut, you're in general, you don't get selected to be an astronaut because you have a lot of astronaut training. Some have no training. Some have never flown in a small airplane. And so we get to learn how to fly. We get to learn how to do sort of everything that an astronaut would need to do. And so that takes a couple years. And again, that's that period we call astronaut candidacy. And then once you've got all the basic skills and knowledge to be an astronaut, then you'll get assigned a mission. And so when I became an astronaut, we were flying the space shuttle. And the space shuttle goes up for a couple of weeks and lands. And so in that time frame, you would get assigned to a crew of 7 people generally, and then you would train about a year. With that training flow schedule was about a year, and then at the end of the year, you'd go on your mission. Now we go to the space station, and the space station is not only more complicated, but you're required to do a lot more things, because when you're on the space station, you are the plumber, you're the electrician, you're the IT person, you're the photographer, you're the, and so in fact, you're the medical officer. And so there's a lot more training involved. And so that training takes about 3 years now. So you get assigned a mission, and then you'll train for 3 years or so. And that requires, and I apologize, I think I'm dropping out because I can see a little warning, but
I think you said
it takes 3 years or so because there's so much. Anyway, yeah, so it takes about 3 years to learn everything you need to know. Plus, there's a lot of travel. You're going to Europe and to Russia and to Japan, because the International Space Station is made up of modules from all over the world, and you have to learn about all the modules. So right now it takes a couple years to learn how to become an astronaut, and then 2 or 3 years to learn how to fly your particular mission.
Okay, interesting. All right. So we'll go to Skull Bernadette from Cork, and we, as in the beginning of this, we actually addressed this. And how many times have you gone to space, and what training did you go through before the mission? So similar to the question before. Right.
Yes. So two trips into space, and training takes longer than you'd think.
Yeah. So we have Ballinakil National School from Galway, and in space with the lack of gravity, and you kind of touched on this as well, like you became the experiment while you were up there. So what effects does it have on your bodily functions? Does the body find it difficult to adjust to the new norm in space?
I mean, that's a great question. And that's what, like when we started going to space in the 1950s, we had no idea, right? There were people that thought that how does food know to go down from your mouth to your stomach? How does it do that? And there were even thoughts like, will the pressure in your eyes make your eyeballs explode and stuff like that. So we had no idea what it was going to be like without gravitational forces. And so we're happy to report that almost everything works normally without gravity. And some of that is amazing. Some of it, it's amazing that you swallow food and the food goes down into your stomach and through your intestines with no help from gravity. And that's not an obvious thing. And so going to the weightless environment is disruptive for a couple days. Some people feel nauseous. Some people get a bad headache. It's weird. You're in an unusual place, and so it's weird on your body. And so your body's like, hey, this is strange. But what's amazing is after about 3 days, 2 or 3 days, your brain just rewires or something, and everything feels normal. So, virtually every bodily function is normal. And like, people didn't know, this is kind of unusual, but people didn't know, will you feel like you have to go to the bathroom? You know, when your bladder gets filled up, gravity is pushing on your bladder, and you're thinking, okay, I have to go to the bathroom. Is that going to happen in space? Well, turns out, yes, it happens in space. It just feels completely normal. There are some changes that are in weightless that are not obvious that we have to worry about. We do. Your bones want force on them to keep them strong, and so we have to artificially put force on our bodies during exercise to keep our bodies to bone strong. And we're finding that that in weightlessness, eyeball shape is changing a little bit, and sometimes it comes back, and sometimes it doesn't come back. And so some people are having changes in their eyesight because of time in weightlessness. And so in general, everything works like you'd expect it to, but there are small changes, and that's why we are doing long duration spaceflight, is trying to find out what are the effects, because we're going to send some people to Mars. We're going to do it. I don't know when, but we're going to do it, and they're going to be in weightless for months and months and months, and then we're going to ask them to get out of the spacecraft and do some work on the surface of Mars. We want to know what changes, what doesn't, what do we have to worry about. So,
yeah, and we do have a question about that later, so we'll actually come back to this question as well.
Great.
But that's fascinating, though, that sometimes in science it's more interesting the things that come out negatives. Like, it wasn't that big.
Right. It's amazing that it's not. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Right.
So let's go on to, so it's from Galway. So Peter Kane's class would like to know, he's from Kilglass National School. Do you still get goosebumps when you think about your spacewalks?
Yeah, well, sure. Spacewalks are, they're very interesting because, again, they're pretty dangerous, and they're pretty high stress because you've been sent outside to do a specific job on the space station, and you don't want to screw it up. So while we are doing a spacewalk, we are so focused on, how do I get to the next bolt? Do I have the right tool? What's the perfect place for my body to do this? We are very in our head about the process of what we're doing. And so spacewalks are so much better after they're done than while we're doing them. And so I remember on many of my spacewalks having a time when I had a 2-minute break between tasks, and I would look around and I'd see Italy go by, or I'd see the coast of California, and I'd try to snapshot that. I'd try to go, remember what this is like. It's just so incredible. But then I'd have to get right back into my job of turning this bolt or whatever it is. And so I could bring those memories back in. So once I'm done and we accomplished the job, then I can remember the experience of what it's like to be outside. And so, yes, what happens is not only do I get the goosebumps, but when I see my buddies, my friends that are doing their spacewalks now, so I can turn on NASA TV and watch my friends out on the spacewalk. I can remember what it's like, and I can remember all the good things about how cool it is to be out in space, and not how painful it is, and how much pressure I'm under to get the right job done.
That's really cool. And I think last summer we were talking, and you said that I think it was Italy that you had seen from space first before you'd actually visited on Earth. Was it Italy?
Yeah, there are many places. Yeah, right. There are many places I've seen from space, and then I get to go visit on Earth and get a much closer view. So yeah,
like that's so interesting to have that kind of experience. Like, oh yeah, I've seen it there, but now it's
right.
Love that.
Looks a lot different down here.
So we have Eileen Griffith's class from Nerney, and they'd like to know, why did you want to become an astronaut? It's kind of similar to what we were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to be an astronaut? Well, I guess it turns out that there are people that don't want to be an astronaut, but I was a kid that always thought being an astronaut would be one of the coolest things you could do. And again, I changed from thinking it's impossible to thinking it's almost impossible, and then the possibility sort of, I guess. I got a point in my career when I was working in the aerospace industry, and that's when I met these astronauts. And that was the moment when I looked back and I said, I have a pretty good resume to send in, or CV to send into the astronaut program. I went to a pretty good engineering school. I have the right degree, but I didn't choose that degree because I want to be an astronaut. I choose it because that's what I like to do. And I've had a couple of good jobs, and I have the fortune of having good health and good eyesight. Yeah. And so it was, rather than plan my path through to become an astronaut, I had an opportunity to look back at the path that I'd chosen and said, yeah, this kind of fits. And so you might as well try.
Yeah, you can't become an astronaut if you at least try. So that's good advice.
Exactly right. Yep.
Yeah. So we have Miss Burnside's class from Sligo, Ireland, and they would like
Sligo.
Have you ever seen the Northern Lights from space?
Yes, the Aurora Borealis. It's spectacular, and I'm not a physicist, so I can't tell you, or a chemist, so I can't tell you the how they are created exactly. But boy, they're beautiful. And so at the right time, and we fly as high as just about Cork, actually, 51 degrees north and then 51 degrees south around the globe. And that's from 400 kilometers up. That gives us a view far north and over the Earth. And so yes, we can get some beautiful views of the Aurora Borealis. And on the southern hemisphere, there's another aurora called the Aurora Australis. Mm-hmm. And so equally as beautiful. And so I've had the privilege of seeing the auroras.
Now, is that similar to the Italy thing? Did you see those before going into space, or did you see them from space first and then before coming back to Earth?
So I had seen small snippets of the auroras. I used to go camping up in almost in Canada, in a state called Minnesota here in the United States. And that's pretty far north, and on a dark night in the summer, I'd seen little flashes of the aurora, but certainly nothing as beautiful as the dancing aurora that we can see from space.
Yeah. Amazing. So we have a third class from Pallaskenry Middle School in Limerick.
Okay.
And they wanted to know where you studied to become an astronaut.
I'll break that up. So where I studied, so my educational process was I went to public schools through high school in America. And then I started my university career at the University of Chicago, and I studied maths there for a couple of years. And then I figured out that engineering was more my thing, building things and designing things. And so I transferred to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, out in Boston. And I finished my degree there. And then I actually went back and did a graduate degree, my master's degree there later. And then to learn how to become an astronaut, you do that at NASA. So NASA hires you to become an astronaut. 35 of us all got, they get selected as a class. And so there are 35 of us that moved to Houston and met each other that first day and got started our training and started learning what it takes to become an astronaut. And so again, many of us in our class, or many astronauts, come to NASA with very little space experience. Some are doctors and or pilots and know something about space, but not a whole lot. That's not really what they're looking for. That's not required to become an astronaut. And so they teach you everything you need to know to become an astronaut, and NASA does that.
So what I'm getting from this, and this goes back to what you were saying before, do what you love to do.
Yeah.
Then, so you bring a skill set to the astronaut training, and then they make you into an astronaut who now has that skill set. Is that kind of how it
That's exactly right. And the irony of becoming picked to be an astronaut is you have to be really, really good at something else, because you don't go to college to become an astronaut and learn how to become the best astronaut in college and at a job. You go and find a career that you excel at. And what NASA does is they want to go out and find the best people in these other fields. And so the irony is, if you want to become an astronaut, be a great doctor, or be a great physicist, or be a great, we just launched yesterday, one of the astronauts that launched to the space station yesterday, her name is Kate Rubins, and I got to be the pleasure of being on her committee when she got hired. She's a specialist on transmittable viruses. People, she was like one of the in contagious diseases, and so she was like the expert on Ebola, and her skills were just fantastic, and we couldn't wait to have her join NASA. But the irony of being a great astronaut, or being selected to be an astronaut, is you got to be really good at something else over here to be look attractive to NASA to be picked to be an astronaut.
And you were breaking up a little bit there. You said that she, if I heard right, that she was picked, she's an expert in transmittable viruses. Is that what it was?
Yeah, she was an Ebola specialist. And so part of her skill set was she would go to Africa and go to these villages where Ebola was breaking out, and she would take data and take samples, and then she'd go work in a lab with all the protective stuff, and work with the actual. She has an amazing career, and but that was fantastic for us at NASA to think those are skills and perspectives that fit really great with being an astronaut.
Which will probably become very useful going forward with the long duration space flights, and then traveling over to other places beyond low orbit and things.
No, that's exactly right. On her first mission a couple of years ago, she did a DNA sequence in space for the very first time. And so I'm looking forward to what she's going to do on this mission that she just started yesterday.
Yeah, that would be really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Let's see, who else are we on to here? There's a third class from the boys' school at Skull Owen Foyle, I think, in Tullamore, and they'd like to know, how long does it take to actually get to the ISS?
That's a very good question. So, and it changed yesterday. So, let me, first of all, to get into space, to get into low Earth orbit, okay, only takes 8.5 minutes. So maybe 9 minutes, depending on the rocket you take. And so you're sitting on the launch pad, you're going 0 miles an hour, and a rocket will accelerate you to a velocity of 17,000 miles an hour in about 9 minutes. It's amazing. And then after that 9 minutes, you are orbiting the Earth. Now, to get to the space station, you have to catch the space station, or you have to catch up with the space station. And I tell people it's like when you run a relay race around a track. You have to start your run exactly at the right time, so that when you get up to speed, you're next to the person that you're going to hand off the baton to. And so that's sort of what we have to do when we catch the space station. The typical profile used to be 2 days. We would launch and we would slowly catch up, and we would get to the space station in about 2 days. Russia, on their Soyuz spacecraft yesterday, managed to figure out how to do it in 3 hours, which is a remarkable accomplishment. And so they have figured out how to launch and rendezvous with the space station in 3 hours. So if you can get everything lined up perfectly, which is what they did, you can do it in a couple hours. But typically, we launch, we get into orbit, and then we slowly catch up. So typically it's a couple days, but if everything lines up perfectly, you can do it in a couple hours.
It's interesting to see how that progresses as well.
Yeah, right.
Flights might mean more
right.
ready to go into space. So that's interesting.
Yep, could be. Yep.
Let's see here what we have next. We have Glenn McQuinn National School from Letterkenny in Donegal, and they would like to know what your longest mission was.
So my longest mission was started in October of 2007. I launched on the space shuttle, and we docked to the space station in a couple days, and then I moved over to the space station, and I lived there for a total of 4 months. So my longest mission in space was for 4 months, from October 2007 to February of 2008, and every day was great.
That's a long time to actually be away from family and the Earth, and that's a long time.
Yeah, I missed Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving and my birthday, but we got to celebrate all those in space.
That's good. Do you have Christmas in space?
We do, yeah. We have a little Christmas tree that we bring out, little stockings, and my commander was great. She called my family and my wife and arranged to have little presents sent up. Of course, we had to send those up. They had to send those up 6 or 8 months ahead of time.
Oh my gosh!
So it was nice. We had little presents. It was great.
And it was a surprise. You didn't know you were getting those?
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, no, it was great.
That's so nice. Let's see who else we have here. Sheila Kenny's class would like to know from Banogue National School, do you like being an astronaut?
Yeah, being an astronaut was fantastic. It was, I call it the best job you can have, because you get to do exciting things, and you get the privilege of doing things that very few other people do. But I guess, I say that, but I left NASA, so I stopped being an astronaut. Because being an astronaut is fantastic, but there are some sacrifices, or there are some downsides. You spend a lot of time away from your family, and it's tough on your family too, because it's a dangerous job. And so after 2 space flights or 2 missions into space, we as a family made the decision that we'll find something a little closer to home. And so, but as a job, you can't beat it. And if it wasn't for the downsides, being away from home a lot, and it being so stressful for your family, I'm envious of my friends that are still flying and going on their missions. And so it's a great job.
So you do miss it sometimes?
Oh yeah, no, especially reading about the missions that my friends are going on, and they get the incredible things they get to do, and reading their tweets and seeing the pictures from space. Yes, I certainly do miss it.
So, you talked about kind of like shifting away from NASA and going into, now you're working in more of the space industry side, right?
Well, so I did. When I left NASA, I went back to a space contractor, a company that builds, we actually built the spacecraft. They went and brought cargo to the space station, and they still do. I left that job a couple of years ago. So I did that for a couple of years after I left NASA. And then I took a little left turn on my career, and we moved to Japan, and I was a high school teacher for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so what I say is, I was with NASA, I was an astronaut, and then I decided to do something really death defying. And so that was to go into a high school classroom and teach science. And it was, I call it the hardest job I've ever had, but the most rewarding thing I've ever done in a day-to-day sense. And so you thank the teachers early on about sending in questions, but I thank teachers all the time because of the amazing job that they do day to day, shaping our future, creating leaders for our future. And so I really enjoyed my time as a teacher, but I recognized that I was relieved when not relieved, but when my 2 years was up as a teacher, I felt good that I could hand over that position to a qualified and professional teacher, because I felt I enjoyed the experience a lot, and I think my students did too. But I'm glad that there are professional teachers that do that day in and day out. It was really difficult. So I did that for a couple of years, and I'm now encouraging people my age who have had great careers and very fortunate careers to consider going back into the classroom and taking their experience and help form the next generation. It's nice to have a non-career teacher as part of a school to give that perspective, and so the students can get insight and stories from someone who's done something. And so I talk to my colleagues, and I try to, if they're thinking about, oh, I'm kind of bored, hey, think about going to be a teacher. It's really it's beneficial for you and beneficial for the students.
Yeah.
After that,
what a way to inspire the next generation.
Yeah, it's what else can you do? I mean, what better thing can you do than be an influence on the next generation?
Yeah.
So, and then now I work for a nonprofit organization here in the United States, and so now my full-time job is to work for an organization that is interested in bettering the relationship between the United States and Japan. So, I've taken I've kind of for now at least, I've left aerospace. I had a 30-year career in aerospace. And so now I'm doing things that some other things that interest me.
Well, there's a question here about the space industry, which is why I was bringing that up, because this was coming from Liam Buckley's class at Ballyvagan National School, and they would like to know what you think about SpaceX. So
it's fantastic. SpaceX has done a fantastic job. And 10 years ago, if you had told me that this company is going to build their own rocket and build it from scratch, and they're going to build it, and they're going to take that first stage, which we typically throw away or drop into the ocean, and they're going to fly it back and land it and reuse it 5 months later, I would have bet a month's paycheck that could never happen. That seemed laughable at the time. And SpaceX is audacious in that they claim to do things that are so unusual or so groundbreaking that it's hard to believe. And yet they have delivered on many or most of those claims. I think that we're glad in this world to have companies like SpaceX, and there are others that are really changing how we think about doing space. And so they've been very, very fortunate. They've had mishaps like many other companies, but so far they have been doing well. So I'm happy that companies like SpaceX exist. They have really shaken up the industry, and you know, I have very little to say against them. I don't know what it's like to work there. I don't know, you know, how they're going to fit into the whole big picture, but they've been remarkably successful. So,
did I lose you?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about my connection, I guess. So anyway, I think they've done a fantastic job, and I admire their success. They've done amazing things.
Yeah, they're very exciting to watch too. They always are posting out on social media and things. There's always something going on. It's what's SpaceX doing today, kind of a thing.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
So the same class also wants to know, do you think we'll get people to Mars?
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get people to Mars. That's probably the big goal right now in the space industry. I don't know when it's going to happen. But I think it's inevitable. We as people want to explore and want to go to the next island or go over the horizon and see the next thing over there. And so it's going to be Mars. And so we will send people to Mars, and it's going to be exciting and unbelievable when we do it. And that's a huge mission. That is months of travel getting there, 6 to 10 months. And then to make the trip between Earth and Mars, you have to wait for the two planets to line up correctly. So now you have to be there for 2 years until the planets get close enough where it makes sense to make the trip back. So when you launch to Mars, you're gone for 3, maybe 4 years, and that's I credit the people that are going to do that. And that's a huge sacrifice. But we're going to do it. I just hope it's in my lifetime. It's going to take a while. There are big problems to solve to figure out how to do this, but we'll do it.
Sure. I always talk to kids about when they come to visit at the castle and things, what it will be like to go to Mars for people. And you see it in movies and things all the time. So I think that there's this idea that's a lot simpler than what it actually is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I say to them, think about that space flight alone. You're stuck in a thing that's not going to be very big for months with people. So you have to be really good at getting along with people before you even get to the planet.
That's exactly right. And that's what we're learning on the space station. So the same thing. We put people on the space station for 6 months at a time. But it's funny. I have a fairly audacious idea about that. Let's say it takes 10 months to get to Mars. And so my idea is, don't train them for what they're going to do on Mars. Don't give them any training for what they're going to do on Mars. Spend the 10 months as their training period, as their school so then they can spend the 10 months getting to Mars, learning about what they're going to do when they get to Mars, because you got to give them something to do. They've got to do something for that 10 months, and find some useful things for them to do. And so maybe that's training for what they're going to have to do or build when they get to Mars.
Yeah, I mean, because there's a huge human element to it. And we know that as people, if we get bored and we're stuck in one place, things don't go very well. So that sounds...
Yeah, exactly right.
Give people training and right. So for all the students out there that have to do their team projects and they go, oh, I got to work on a team with... No, this is very important. Teamwork is very...
That's probably one of the big things that you absolutely have to get good at. It's one of the things we look for is the ability to work together as a team, both as a leader and as the non-leader of a team. You've got to be good at both of those roles.
Yeah, that's a very good point. They're very interesting.
Right.
So we are pretty close to the end of the hour here. So I want to ask one last question from Edmonstown National School in Dublin. And they'd like to know, what is your greatest accomplishment?
So let's see. As a relatively old man sitting here, when I look back, my greatest accomplishments are my children and my marriage, so those are the things that I feel are the greatest accomplishments. In terms of my career in space, getting myself to be considered seriously to become an astronaut, I consider to be an accomplishment. So that's getting picked to be an astronaut it's not sheer luck. It's not all luck, but there's a lot of luck involved. And so I can't take credit for becoming an astronaut. I came to that, I sent in my application and I had a lot of, at that point, I had whatever they were looking for. And, but I had no control of that. But in terms of accomplishment, I put myself in a place where I could send in a serious application. And that was grades, and that's a work experience, and that is life experience that I had accumulated to create a good application to become an astronaut. And so I'm proud of that. And those are things that under my control. And I find I feel like that's something that I did right. In terms of like an activity, there's a moment where I was doing a spacewalk, and we had done 3 spacewalks to install this module to the space station. And there was one moment where the 3 spacewalks worth of work was either going to work or not, because we were creating this fluid link all around the outside of the space station. And if we had messed up any step along the way, it wasn't going to work. And there was a moment where I'm holding this big valve that this fluid goes through, and I open the valve. Now I can feel the fluid moving through. That was a technical accomplishment, of great relief, where I thought we did our job, because if we didn't, then the space station is all messed up. I think of that as that accomplishment moment of that was a moment where I felt like, okay, I was sent here to do a big job, and this is probably the biggest part of this job, and I've accomplished that. So I felt that was sort of a technical accomplishment, but in the overall sense, I feel proud of my family, and that I was able to do things that were under my control, that enabled me to become seriously considered to be an astronaut.
That's fantastic. And you've given such great advice for students today that are interested in pursuing a career. And I think for the big takeaway is really just, like I said before, do what you love. It takes all different types of people, backgrounds, and see if you can try to figure out a way to apply that to space, because there are opportunities for all different types of people in the space industry.
Right. And so, yeah, the point I want to make is that maybe engineering or science or math is not your thing, but you're still excited about space. Well, it turns out that if you're a clothes designer, we're going to have to design clothes for space, right? Like somebody brought SpaceX up. They created their own spacesuits, and they look cool. And so if you're a fashion designer and you want to do space, I think there's room for you. If you're a cook and you want to design food, if you're a lawyer, if you like law, if you love law and regulation, boy, we're going to need smart legal experts in space pretty soon, because you put people anywhere, you're going to need laws regulating.
Yeah.
Or a writer or an artist. Turns out that the more people we send into space, the more of everything we're going to need. So if you're interested in almost anything, I think there's going to be room in the space industry for your expertise. And so get excited about space. We're going to need lots and lots of experts about all sorts of things. So I think space is a field where you can pursue with almost any expertise that you've got, that you bring to it.
That's absolutely fantastic advice. And thank you. We have so many questions here for so many different people coming live chat, and so many more from schools as well. We could keep going on forever, but thank you so much for giving your time to us today, Dan, and to going through all of the questions with us and giving such fantastic advice. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I just want to say,
it's my pleasure.
Thanks so much. And you have a time difference too, so you got up early and everything for this. So
no problem.
And hopefully we'll get to see you back in Ireland sooner.
We can't wait to get back. Yeah, my family's from, my wife's family is all from Cork, and so we usually are there in the summer and in the fall. We don't know the next time we're going to be able to get back, and so we can't wait. But hi to all of my friends, everybody I've met in Ireland, and everybody at Black Rock Castle. So we'll get back soon. We hope, as soon as we can.
Yeah. Yes, you're welcome anytime. We can't wait to see you again. And I just want to thank all the teachers who have their students watching and for sending in your questions in advance. And if you have any questions after, sure, leave them in the comments there, and we'll try to get back to any questions for you that we might have. And like I said before, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, then you'll get notified next time we do a really fun live stream like this. And I hope everybody had a fantastic space week. We had a great time here, and we'll see you all very soon.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye.
There we go. Perfect.